one thing everybody can agree on is the objective of S5, you know, when it comes to protecting our youth and at the same time giving access, providing access to vaping, to smoker. And one of the things in the center of that is promotion of flavor that may be appealing to our youth. And I want to hear you. You did talk about it a little bit, but I do want to hear you more about the restriction. It is my understanding that it is not, you know, the chemical mix and the flavor itself that will be banned. It is really the promotion of it. And so to me, from the outside, it seems like people will adapt to it. You know, they will adapt to the new names. So I do want to hear about that because that's seemed to be something that vapers are very passionate about. And so I want to understand that a little bit better. Why is it such? Why is the nuance such important to you in terms of the name, and when really the flavor will remain?
This is for me or him?
Madame, maybe first.
Okay.
Thank you.
Corrected in the first instance, so we can move along.
Okay, thank you. I think basically at this point is, I agree there's a certain adaptation level when it comes to flavoring, and it's not so much the current vapors that we're concerned about. Of course, we all have our favorite liquids that we may be using. However, I'm more concerned about the people that will be walking into the shops that are switching. They don't know what's available, but I understand that as our taste buds change within 4 to 5 days, that tobacco liquid that we started with is rank. People do not want to use this. But how are they going to be able to navigate to something that they're going to like? They won't be able to because they will not know that it exists. So it's going to push them and force them back to buying traditional cigarettes. And that's something that we want to avoid at all costs. So if that means that we are going to have a cheesecake liquid, then that's a cheesecake liquid. And I think if it's prohibited for children to enter stores, then that marketing aspect should not extend into the stores. It comes with a certain education level, and that's something that we need to address as an industry for especially those who are wanting to switch.
Yeah, so just to echo what Shay says, and we do understand that the implication here is that flavor names would be restricted, but also there are descriptions as well. And one of the critical parts of vaping is the range of flavors. And many vape shops carry, upwards of 100, 200, even 300 different types of flavors. I mean, everybody has different tastes, right? Some of the most important ones are in those categories. And the critical thing that we're looking for here is not to, put on the TV that we want to advertise blueberry cheesecake and describe it and anything like that. What we want to be able to do is when our customers come in and they want to know what that non-descriptive name flavor actually tastes like, that they can have reasonable access to a decent description. We're not asking to be able to post that all over the place, but if they can come into an age-restricted vapor product shop, they should be able to have access to an accurate description without having to fumble around with the wording of it. And that was kind of the point of that amendment that we had submitted.
Thank you. Senator Steedman to be followed by Senator Stewart-Olson.
Thank you. Thank you both very much for your presentations. My question is really addressed to both of you, and so, perhaps Mr. David, you could start, and then Ms. Sinnis, you could continue. Health Canada and the U.S. Surgeon General statistics for 2015 indicate that 25% of youth aged 12 to 19 years old have tried e-cigarettes. And there is an expressed concern, though there is not yet sufficient evidence, that e-cigarettes might serve as a gateway to nicotine addiction for a new generation of users and renormalize smoking. I'd like to ask you about two aspects that might be incorporated in the legislation that could potentially address this fear, this issue. One has to do with the levels of nicotine in the liquid that's used for vaping. We all know that nicotine is an extremely addictive substance. In fact, it could be toxic. And currently, in this legislation, there are no set concentration levels. And I'm wondering, as experts and a long-time experience in the vaping area, if you have some comment specifically about the e-liquid and the content, the nicotine content levels, number one. And number two, the other issue has to do specifically with advertising and marketing, and the fact that the legislation has looser, this S5 has looser advertising and marketing restrictions than tobacco use itself. So although, this legislation adds and amends the Tobacco Act to include vaping, the marketing and advertising aspects of it are not as tight as they are for tobacco. I'd like you to address both those aspects.
Sure. So with regards to the nicotine level in e-liquid, one thing that needs to be considered is that there are a vast range of different types of devices that some are more powerful, some are closed systems. And these devices, some are more effective at delivering nicotine than others. What my recommendation from our organization would be to that have a higher level, so something around 24 milligrams per milliliter of nicotine, which is really quite high, but it also addresses smokers who, and there are quite a few that smoke up to 2 packs of cigarettes a day, or they chain smoke, that really need that to supplement their nicotine. And it also allows for the less effective but more convenient devices that don't produce as much vapor or don't deliver the as much vapor when inhaled. So going too low would be harmful in the sense that it doesn't cover everybody who really needs that level of nicotine. Going too high is certainly unnecessary. We don't see anything. When this industry first started, there was even liquid that went up to 36 milligrams, and that's unnecessary. So that would be my recommendation along those lines. For marketing and advertising, as Shay said in our presentation, the effectiveness of this industry isn't due to large marketing campaigns as it is. It's really, there's a lot of word of mouth, and primarily advertising and marketing within a vape shop itself. So being able to share information, flavor descriptions, and be able to talk about different things, having posters on the wall, that type of thing I think is certainly essential. And it's good that you really shouldn't have the same level of strict marketing prohibitions for vaping as you would for smoking. I mean, vaping is the harm reduction alternative, so it should never be restricted in the way that smoking would be. So it's good, and I think it should go even a little bit further, allowing a little bit more promotion, primarily in vapor shops.
Please.
Absolutely. So with response to the marketing and advertising, definitely, and to echo much of what Daniel said, I would have to say within this industry, a lot of the marketing that may be perceived as marketing comes a lot from the consumer levels, whereas you see from the industry standpoints, it's mostly informational marketing, and that is to market this product as a harm reduction tool. And our marketing comes in ways of studies and science that has come out from doctors, from scientists. And with respect to your gateway theory question, when I read this, I think the most effective study to refute what you had said was actually placed by CIHR, and that was conducted by University of Victoria. And it does state that at this current time, with the science that is available, there's nothing to support the claim that this is driving youth to smoking. And that's something that I want to make sure everybody understands. We do not at all want this product in the hands of minors, and we definitely agree at that point. And that's why we want to ensure that marketing does stay on the informational side of things.
Senator Stewart Olson, to be followed by Senator Dean.
Thank you, Chair. I will be very direct with you. I don't like this legislation, and I don't think that we are monitoring new products and vaping the way we should be. We have a permissive government looking to legislate and legalize marijuana, and this is steps along the way to make everything easier and more accessible to our children and to our adults. And so I recognize that you're responsible and that you're doing your best to, in an industry. I thank you for the information that the World Health Organization is advising people to not go this route that our government is doing. But I would see one positive outlook, and I'd like both of you perhaps to give me a brief answer. Have you thought of taking the responsibility of informing the public of the warnings and perhaps the hazards and how to try to avoid these if they use your products?
So, with regards to informing the public and education, certainly through our organization, we do have a lot of our information that's publicly available on our website. So it's very informative with regards to our e-liquid testing standards, what's tested for and why, different elements, quality control, those kinds of things. Usually with any type of concern, so maybe battery concerns, that kind of thing, all the material that we develop and release to manufacturers and vendors, it's, again, publicly available. We encourage, all of our members to, send their clients to the ECTA website. But even on the materials that we include with, the warning, we have warning inserts for products. It has sources for the website where to go to find out more information. Education is key to this, absolutely, and it's part of what we need to be able to continue to do. One of the best avenues for that is through vapor product shops.
Yes, and again, with the CVA, we do look to ECTA as regulatory standards to produce those studies, as well as working with our own experts. And we do make sure that this information is available to everyone. Now, when it comes to the education aspect, this is something that the bill will prohibit if an amendment isn't made to that. And again, the education aspect of this is key. We want to ensure that the 37,000 Canadians that die every year, that number finally reduces after decades. And we have a product here as a tobacco harm reduction tool that can and will, but we need to be able to have the freedom of education to educate our consumers, to educate the public, even non-vapors and non-smokers, so they understand what this product is and why, and that is to reduce harm.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Senator Dean, to be followed by Senator Frum.
Thank you, Chair. I'm listening carefully to the really interesting discussions that we're having at this committee, and it seems to me that one way of looking at this is that we're talking about an appropriate balance between a harm reduction model and a regulatory model. There is clearly a third element in the mix, which is the growing commercialization of this practice and this industry, which introduces some other interests, if I can call it that way. So we have some economic interest thrown in there. And at the end of this, the Senate is going to have to figure out what the right calibration is between those things. There's no doubt that harm reduction is part of a growing part of an approach towards tackling addictions and substance abuse. And that is what we're talking about here, I think. We know that harm reduction is used fairly extensively, but that tends to go hand in hand with fairly tight regulation. there is not an inconsistency in my mind, and I think in terms of policy practices and regulatory practices between those two things coexisting. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. The question is what's an appropriate mix. And so here's, there would be some, and I think I would include myself in this group because of my experience in dealing with the aftermath of workplace injuries, which are arguably more preventable. Some would say that harm reduction, yes, it's a really good thing, but when we're talking about risk and public health and safety, we shouldn't be going too far down the harm reduction route without thinking about an appropriate and, in some cases, tough approach to regulation. What's your reaction to that? Because that's the dilemma that policymakers and decision makers will be confronted with, I think, at the end of the day, at least in my mind. What's an appropriate balance? And we're seeing different perspectives on that. What's your reaction to that?
Mr. David?
So I would fundamentally agree with basically everything that you just said. And with a harm reduction product like vaping, what our suggestion would be to, yes, tough regulations. Those should really focus on product quality and quality control, ensuring that the few ingredients that are in the e-liquid are accurate, that proper education and warnings for certain things are on packaging. So e-liquid that contains nicotine, you can't drink it. That kind of proper, it's tight regulations in the sense that labeling is, you can't put anything you want on the label of a bottle. You have to have certain information, and so I would agree that to an extent it should be very strict. Liquid should be regularly tested, and there's provisions within the bill for emissions testing and product testing, ingredient limitations, and those are absolutely good things to do. Where the balance really comes in is, ensuring that these regulations don't go so far to push things a little bit more where we can't get the message out. We can't provide information to smokers who are curious and looking to make the switch over. But that really, regulations for marketing and advertising. They should, they should only be targeted to adult smokers. Of course, this product is, designed for adult smokers, so that should be the only target. But again, we just have to be careful with that balance so that we aren't. There's no indication or anything else that this product is the same as tobacco. That they're equal in any way. That should be. We should be able to clearly state that this is a harm reduction product, because that's what attracts people from smoking over to vaping.
Something I wanted to add, and it did come up with your labels. ACTA themselves, actually, as we stated, they have been dealing with self-regulatory standards for the entire industry. In 2013, they actually designed a label. Now, most vendors across Canada are using this label, and that falls under the consumers. The CCCR, the Consumers, Chemicals, and Containers Regulations. Now, this has a first aid. It explains not to ingest, not to leave around children. You also have to understand the poison control symbol is on the front of the bottle. The bottles also have the child-proof lids. They're tamper-proof as well. This way we can ensure that we are taking preventative measures. Now, most parents, they're not apt to leave something laying around. However, it happens, and that's why they have gone as far as they have to create this. So not only is the bottle safe with its child-proof lid, but we also have the first aid requirements there, so the parent knows properly what to do should something be ingested.
Thank you. Senator Frum, followed by Senator Hartling.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Sinnis, at the end of your presentation, you referred to e-cigarettes as a tool, a responsible tool to get smokers off harmful cigarettes.
Yes.
And that seems clear, and I agree with you there. However, we also know, Senator Seidman cited a statistic of 25% of youth having tried it. There's also FDA statistics from the U.S. saying that there are 3 million youth users of e-cigarettes, kids who are in middle and high school, and that in the FDA report, 81% of youth users of e-cigarettes pointed to appealing flavors as the main reason why they took up e-cigarettes in the first place. I heard the point you made. How do you get smokers to move from conventional cigarettes to e-cigarettes? They have to be appealing, or Mr. David, you made that point. They need to have these appealing flavors or they won't switch. But we also know that the appeal of these products to young people, underage people, are these appealing flavors. So I just want to ask you how you would find the balance between those two things.
First of all, again, I'm not a scientist, so I won't sit here to refute science, but what I can say is to compare the Canadian industry to the United States industry, it's apples and oranges. Truly it is. And their way of marketing is something that Canada hasn't done. Much like their billboards and their marketing that they have put out, whether it be on TV, online, is not something that Canada has displayed. We have been pretty responsible, and that was with a lot of help from ECTA coming out early in the game to give responsible advice to companies across. Now, when it comes to the flavoring, it's not appealing to get them to vape. It's your taste buds change very quickly, and anybody who vapes can attest to this. Generally, vapors will start with a tobacco flavor. E-liquid, personally, I did not. I started with a candy bar. That was mine. And for me, after smoking 2 packs a day, that flavor worked for me. That's what worked. I tried, wow, that's it. But for most people, they don't know what to go to. They're like, at first they'll walk in and they'll tell you, I'm not going to smoke a fruit. I'm not going to smoke a cake. But after 4 or 5 days, their taste buds change. Their smell comes back. And they don't know what to do. And you'll see them. They're pleading with you. They're like, this is awful. I want to smoke. I don't like this. You didn't tell me it was going to be this awful. And that's where the flavor aspect comes in. Do I think that there's issues with labels? Absolutely. And I think this is something that, like I said, introducing the CCCR compliant labels, being restrictive, is key. This provides them with the name of the flavor. It provides them with first aid and the company name. Very plain, but it still gives them certain branding without going too deep.
Mr. David?
So to create the balance, I think that's the way that we have to go, is look at some of ECTA's regulations.
I would actually say that a lot of what is established in this bill is adequately appropriate to strike that balance in the sense that we're setting age restrictions for the product itself. Some of our recommendations to go even further with vapor product shops restricting entry to youth only. One of the key areas for people making the switch is at a vapor product shop because they have the experience and knowledge to be able to detail their consumers. And so the controls on media advertising and age-restricted use, along with what's there for limiting flavor, just very descriptive flavor names, I believe that's more than adequate.
Senator Hartling, to be followed by Senatrice Meji.
Hi. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm a former smoker many, many years ago, so this is all a whole new world. But I find people that I know that smoke, it's an insidious addiction, and they would do anything to quit. So I guess, to say, when you go into a vaping shop, I'm just wondering, we're talking about harm reduction, are the people educated in a way that they can help us look at, okay, these are the steps you can take to quit? And in terms of that, also, what about the costs and things like that? Like, what would be the process if I went in and I'm still smoking and said, okay, help me, I want to quit? What would happen?
Well, so you obviously enter the store and indicate that that's what your goal is. We would probably have a bit of a discussion on, your level of knowledge, what you've heard about vaping and that kind of thing. Essentially, the process to switch over would be asking questions like how much you smoke, how long you've smoked, what types of what kind of size device are you looking for, those kinds of simple things. One of the key aspects of this actually being successful, however, is again, we're back to the flavors, and it's going through and a lot of people when they first make this transition over, they start with a tobacco flavor, kind of eases that transition process. Then a lot of people also go to fruits and other flavors as well. But it's going through all the different flavors, finding really what that individual would like, actually physically testing it in the store. Now I know there's some provinces where you can't do that, but that is also critically important to the process. And then once you kind of go through that flavor selection process, and then you kind of get into the nicotine levels. So, I mean, what we would do as a vapor product store is detail what levels usually somebody, if you smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, in our experience, people who smoke a pack of cigarettes a day typically go with either a 6 milligram or a 12 milligram e-liquid, and that's milligrams per milliliters. Now, on the side of doing that detail with customers, that's part of actually our certification process that is in development right now. It's kind of standardizing what information should be relayed consistently across the country, ensuring that all the staff know what they're supposed to be talking about and any limitations for provincial and federal regulations that may be on them.
But the cost compared to like a pack of cigarettes what would be?
The cost is probably in the range of 50 to 80% below smoking. So an average person might, the initial investment is quite a bit. It can range between, $80 to $300. It depends on what you want to get. The average would probably be about $120 to start up. But once you have that kit, the maintenance is really just purchasing more liquid for it. And that can range between $20 and $40 a month. So the maintenance is quite low compared to what we pay for cigarettes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So when I look at this, when I look at cost, the average smoker in today's, the economy line cigarettes, spends approximately, as a pack-a-day smoker, $4,825 annually. Whereas the average vapor that switched from pack-a-day to an electronic cigarette vapes roughly $400 annually. And this is just buying bottles of liquid and continuing on.
Thanks.
Followed by Senator Greenring.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be asking my question in French, if I may. Before I ask my question, I'd just like to clarify something that I think that I misunderstood. Mr. David, you said that perhaps it is necessary to increase the nicotine rate in vapor products to 36 milligrams. Is that correct?
The 36 was where the industry started 7 years ago. Over time, that nicotine level has gone down. Nobody uses anything that high, and this is what I was referring to was the retail sale of the product. It was really we're going down in nicotine concentration.
Okay, merci. Donc ça m'inquiète moins.
Thanks. I'm less concerned now. Perhaps I'll go ahead and ask my question now, Mr. Chair. So, what we are aware of is in order to stop smoking, we started with 21 for the biggest smokers, then reduced to 14, and then to 7. And it's based on the number of weeks tailored to the individual. So is there somebody, for example, among members of the staff who can provide the kind of advice that you referred to earlier and manage this effectively? Because often there are healthcare professionals who provide some form of follow-up as to how things are progressing, whether the individual is tolerating it. There's a whole host of guidelines. Are your staff well trained to manage that element?
They are certainly well trained. This is quite an experienced industry at this point. That being said, we are not healthcare providers. We do not design or custom tailor a cessation program for our customers. It's based on what that customer, that vapor, what their personal need and desire is. If they want to take aside 2 months and say, I'm going to start vaping, but in 2 months, I'm done. I'm done smoking and I'm done vaping. And they're asking for specific, questions on how to achieve that. We can kind of lead them into in the sense of, well, you would want to step down from the high level to the mid level to the low level. It's certainly up to them to choose which method that they want to go. But what you were kind of explaining is really more the cessation side, which is not the method that we deal with this.
Okay. Excuse me.
If I may, Mr. Chair, but the objective of getting people onto vaping and off smoking is to a large extent to help them to make the transition between smoking cigarettes and, in fact, stopping smoking permanently. So if you weigh up the difference, I'm not quite sure that it's so helpful. All of these flavours, in fact, mask the fact that there is some nicotine contained therein, nevertheless.
However, nicotine is not carcinogenic. Nicotine is not the part of smoking that does any damage to your body. It's the result of combustion and combustion-related chemicals that actually causes damage to the tar buildup. The nicotine certainly is addictive. Don't get me wrong on that. But that's not really the major concern from smoking. It's the combustion-related chemicals.
Okay. Senator Green-Rain to be followed by Senator Petitclerc.
Thank you very much. I want to direct my questions to the subject of advertising and promotion and around that could be defined as being directed at children and youth. And I'm just wondering how you differentiate between marketing directed to adults and marketing directed to youth.
So it's actually a good question. At one point in time, our organization was actually attempting to define that lifestyle type of advertising as well, and drawing that line is kind of difficult. I would say that marketing and advertising that uses a delivery method that is by its very nature targeted at adults. That those types of marketing and advertising routes should be open and available. Having primetime TV commercials and that kind of thing wouldn't be. And this is where a lot of some of the restrictions with the way that we understand it seem to be appropriate within the bill. Defining the line of what's attractive to youth and what isn't, that's a difficult question to answer, because my perception of what would be attractive to somebody that's young, it might be quite different from anybody else's.
Well, yes and no. When it comes down, are you talking about the actual marketing of the product or the promotion of the flavors? Because those are two totally different aspects that we're looking at.
I would say anything that makes young people think it's cool to vape.
Well, as a mom of 4, when I look at this, I can't decide what they think is cool. Kids will do what they wish to do. But when it comes down to flavorings, for example, I didn't lose my taste buds the moment I became an adult. Most of us enjoy cake on our birthdays. And as adults, if we want to go as far as saying most of us, when we consume an alcoholic beverage, an adult beverage, we add a flavor additive to lessen the strength and the flavor in that. So a kid may, by all intents and purposes, like cheesecake, but most of us do as well. So when it comes down to the flavor aspect, when it comes down to asking what will a kid like, everything. Kids like everything. When it comes down to marketing publicly, I don't think it's necessary to have television commercials promoting a sexy lady in a red dress vaping an electronic cigarette. I think that if there's any marketing going on, much like any other adult advertisements, it should be done late night, if at all.
Okay, what about, because marketing now isn't just print ads and
Not just, no.
television and billboards and point of purchase. It's also online. And it's done with Disney cartoon characters and testimonials by Justin Bieber or whatever.
Yep.
So what do you think should be the parameters around that kind of testimonial marketing to make taking up vaping by children and youth less intense, less desirable?
Well, I think the bill covers a lot of that. Really, it does when it comes down to the lifestyle promotion. And that's something that, of course, I think if there's any enticement, it does come from lifestyle. But when we look at social media, the most part here, we look at all the platforms, as companies, we can lay out a framework for them to follow. At a consumer level, that's something that we're going to have to do as well. But we have to rely on those platforms, not on us, to be able to do that. So when it comes down, I think the bill, for the most part, actually finishes this once and for all and will make the advertisement appropriate.
Okay, I think we can't resolve this any further. They've given you the answer that they have, Senator, and we'll move on. Senator Petitclerc to be followed, if possible, by Senator Seidman.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now, I have one very short question and then a question. Is that okay? One very short.
The sponsor
It's
of the
just
bill, I will give you a little
Thank
extra
you.
leeway here.
My very short question. I understand, this is you're focused on harm reduction, but it is also a market and a product, and profits will come from that. I was pleased to hear, Mr. Daniel, you saying that the only people we want to market is smokers, like adult smokers. So I did not hear you, Madame Sinnis, on that, and so I would like to have quickly, are you in line with that, that we're not trying to build a new market, it's for smokers?
110%.
Thank you. And my other question was, Mr. Daniel, on your website, it says that the entire industry is deeply threatened by Bill S5. So I want to hear you on that, because that's pretty intense. So how is the industry threatened by the bill?
Well, so, with the bill as it is right now, it's very broad in scope. So this takes into account not just the bill itself, but then the accompanying regulations. When we get down to that phase, things can go from, what seems to be fairly reasonable that, at Bill S5, maybe, certainly some amendments in it, but to something where the restrictions could be so onerous that our industry itself, the domestic homegrown industry that we have right now, couldn't really afford to participate, and it would drive things underground into a black market. And I think it's really a general concern with the direction of where this bill is, and certainly flavors are a big aspect of this, being able to provide information, accurate, factual information, is critical. And so, in that context is really what the website is referring to. It's the full scope of what this bill is as written, but also within the regulations and the intent.
Thank you very much.